Hello, Amy. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is to complete my assignment, creating a Salesforce page as part of the hiring process for a Salesforce developer at Now. And thank you so much for listening. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my Salesforce developer edition. I'm going to share my screen. So as you can see on this video, you have my Salesforce org with a custom app, and basically I have several tabs as a basic Salesforce Developer Edition, and the requirement is to have an input box or field where I can pass Salesforce ID, an account ID, and then with a click of button, you want to display the Salesforce page. I'm using standard Salesforce controller to populate all the pertinent information as a part of that Salesforce page itself. So the quickest way with the short time I have is to standard controller within the account Salesforce account detail record page. So the redirect of the submit button is to bring me to the accounts detail record page with a related list section of that Salesforce page. So I'm going to go ahead and then click submit. Then it will bring me over to this section where the Salesforce page display the siblings, the parent account with the siblings accounts. So I put the first team management as the parent account always on the top, and these accounts are the available accounts to display when, with the conditioning, when we have the primary contact to display. So to use a primary contact associated with an account is with standard Salesforce functionality is to have account contact relations. Within that account contact relations, you can establish the primary contact checkbox. So I'm gonna basically go to the record itself really quick. So there you go. You have this contacts associated with this account, and then you have a contact role that says Karen Steven is the primary contact for this account. Okay, so to display Karen Steven is the primary contact for this account in the Salesforce page. Same thing for First Team Real Estate Irvine. The primary contact is Charles Barkley, and for First Team Commercial Estate, Brandon Wheeler, and for First Team Commercial San Diego, you have Sarah Sullivan. Now, let me choose a different account. Okay, so University of Arizona has a contact, but it doesn't have a contact role to associate the primary contact of this account. So it will not display in the Salesforce page because the requirement says needs to return all sibling accounts under the same parent account and their primary contact. Now I include the error handling that they will display if there is no assignment to that contact, primary contact and the contact roles, then it will not display the records. So I include several error handling, and this is the Salesforce pages. First one is to pass the account ID with a click of button. I pass to bring the Salesforce page, and then call out the account records with that Salesforce page functionality. So I'm gonna go back to the accounts, go back to the First Team Management. So we have several fields, and then I use the input field where you can easily add or edit the record directly. and you can change it to have this basically required to save as an output text field. I use this input text field because this is straight, you can change it, and most importantly that the functionality itself, when you code it, I will have to consider the sharing settings in the controllers itself. But for these purposes, it's open for just the exercise. And the piece of requirement also is about if I make a selection. So first of all, let me go back and change. You know what? So let me do this. So the contact status fields for Brandon Wheeler and Sarah Sullivan, if I click the check boxes and then click this button to update contact status on the selected accounts, you should update the contact status to a contacted status. So go ahead and click that button. There you go. Now that piece of information is contacted. Or I can change from all this contacted to none. To satisfy the requirements, the user should also be able to edit the contact name, email, phone number, status, and text ID. For now, I'm testing the contact status. I change it everything to none, and I hit save. There you go. Now it returns the error handling that the record has been updated successfully. So now even if you refresh, it should say everything to none. Okay. Now what you see here is too many accounts displaying only first 100 records. So this is where the error handling, if you have too many records, you only want to display into a window where, for user experience, again, it's good to have a certain number of limit to display records in a page. In this example, we use if anything is greater than 2, it shows these messages. And then I'll show you the code. I will show you the code where it says that error handling. Now I want to go back. So the update contact status on the selected accounts, we tested it. It works. The save button to edit, it works. And then if I want to do change from the text ID from something to nothing, I just hit cancel. Then it changed all the input that is not committed to database yet. Now, if you ask me if I want to change the piece of phone number, and I want to change it from the 949 to 818 222 2222, and then hit save. And again, I was able to. Now, for this exercise, the contact name is not made for edit mode because functionality-wise, I have to break this field into the contact first name and last name, and then make it as a separate field. And that's something that I wasn't clear as what is the purpose of this contact name to be edited, because why do we have a contact name and then edit it? That's something that the requirement pieces that needs to be clear. But again, I can do that if I parse this into two separate fields as a primary contact first name and primary contact last name, and then display the edit separately in this Salesforce workspace. But for this exercise, just want to explain it to you that the reason why that's not working here for the contact name, because I have to parse it into two separate names. Now, in terms of, oh yeah, one more pieces of information. So first team management, if you see, So first team management is the parent account. I use this functionality for a checkbox just to clarify which one is parent account and which one is not. And when it is a parent account, it doesn't have a related accounts. So let me go back to the account tabs. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 first team that has to be displayed. In the Salesforce page, but why do I only have 4? And the reason why, because we only want to display the accounts that have the contact roles with the primary account checkbox is true. So anything that doesn't have a primary contact should not be displayed here. So which one that do not have the primary contact? So let's so this one is Irvine as commercial and San Diego. So let me go back to the accounts. Okay, so if I go to the Los Angeles, I don't have a contact and I don't have a contact role. So now it's showing our error handling in our Salesforce page that says no records to display, because the dependencies for this Salesforce page to return the primary contacts is to have the conditioning. You need to have a contact and you need to have a contact roles. So let's create the contact itself. So I'm going to create a dummy record, and I have a record type as a company investor, for example. And I'm going to create first name John Doe, and then I'm going to have a mobile phone number populated. And I'm just going to copy exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna create a second contact also. So I'm just gonna clone this, and I would name it as Tina Williams, and I'm going to change it as office director. And I can choose reports to John Doe and contact status none, and text ID. Okay, and I'm going back to John Doe to just for the sake of this completeness of the records. Say contact name and text ID is okay. So now let's go back to the account name itself. Now, the one thing that we have to have, so right now it doesn't display anything, right? So first, I'm going to click this as not a parent account. So the parent account is the first team management. That's true. Active to yes. Now in the contacts, let's do the contacts. Okay. Now, in Salesforce, once you create a contacts, then the related context is automatically created. So let me change the Tina Williams email really quick. Sorry about that. And then contact status, let's say none. Okay. Okay, still it doesn't have the account hierarchy displayed because we do not have the contact roles to assign the primary contact. So with that, what you want to do is going to the related contacts. Once you have created the contacts, Salesforce automatically assign the relationship account and contacts. So, and then you can just go to the account contact roles. And edit relationship. Let's say for Tina, I'm gonna make it as evaluator. And then for John Doe, I'm gonna make the role as the decision maker. Oops. That's Los Angeles. Now the contact role is still missing. What you need to do is just create a new contact role, look up the contact, John Doe, assign it as a primary with the same role that we created in the relationship as the decision maker. Okay, now there you go. It's automatically populating in the account hierarchy for Salesforce page. Okay. Now this Salesforce page only displays one primary contact per account. If you use the account contact role to assign a primary contact, each account can only have one primary contact. It cannot assign more than one. So if you need to have a primary contact that is more than two or more than one, so if you have 5 primary contacts, you will have to create a custom configuration with a custom fields of primary contact in each contact record, and do the lookup relationship, or you can do the master detail relationship, and then have that populated into the Salesforce page and configure it the way that it will display the information accordingly. So that is something that we can always do as part of the custom functionality. But again, for this exercise, we are using the standard functionality in Salesforce alone. So there you have it. I'm just gonna choose a few more examples. Oh yeah, so let's go back to the first team management. Now we have one more, which is first team real estate Los Angeles, that already has the master the contact roles in that record. So now it should display first team management as the parent. So first team management as the parent, and showing all other 1, 2, 3, 4, so total 5. So it's getting more records of that accounts. Okay. Now the error handling is, if you see this one, is about a warning when you display too many accounts. It's basically displaying only first 100 records. In this exercise, I'm using only more than 2. That is too many already. So I'm not sure if I went over about the update and the save. So I think that's pretty much of what I have to deliver. Um, I want to go back to the assignment narrative itself. So the assignment overview is to have my thought process uh, building the solutioning, right? So the question is about develop solution in my own sandbox and provide what exactly how I would go about handling the request. So let me explain by my thought process when I read this piece of requirement is number one to have I would add more details about the requirement itself. Where's the visual floor space should be end up with the location of the visual floor space. Should it be using a standard controller or a custom controller? Should it be located in the account detail page or object detail page? Or should it be in the custom home components or a custom tabs? Or should it be located in a specific web browser with a specific URL. So there are several ways that we can establish on how to display visual floor space. So my thought process number two is there are tools to help the development of a visual floor space or development of Apex in general. Typically, I would use a Visual Studio Code with a project downloaded from my org directly to the Visual Studio Code and create a project from there. But for this exercise, I go straight to my let's see. Okay, I go straight to my uh, developer console right there. But I want to show you how tools can help you building a code. So one is developer console. Secondly, when you open the developer console and in the middle of your developing code, you have the ability to do a debug log within the developer console. It allows you to do a system debug where you know the set of records that you declare. You want to test that the database has committed to the new account creation or a new records in the list to be called into display in the visual floor space. So developer console, debug log in developer console, Visual Studio Code, and if you have a tools like version controlling like a Git or GitHub or Bitbucket, that is something that really helps the continuous integration and continuous development to play in effect. So with the continuous integration Git, it allows you to do a master, to do a branching of your piece of code, and then to do a sharing with other developers, and still commit it to only a piece of what you build, and then push it back to the master branch for the code that you build. So that alone, it really helps you to have the cleanest version control of the code itself. So, and then we can discuss further more about the version control. There are tools that you can do. For example, I use AutoRabbit at my current place. So AutoRabbit is one of the Salesforce partners that allows you to do this CI/CD and also to do a fault data backup recovery and then the release management. So imagine that you have a process where it starts from the user story. It has that repository for Jira. You can create a Jira user story, a task within this AutoRabbit, and also you can push the task and then create a dependencies with the solution that you have, and pull the version controlling, and then start working the version controlling in your own development sandbox. The good thing also, they are Salesforce DX ready, and basically what it does is to allows you to do a scratch org just to build this piece of functionality like official force page. So that's the tools I would consider. And also, if any tools that requires data duplication, there are other tools to make sure before we display the accounts and contact information, so that we will not display the same primary contact in different accounts, for example, to do a data deduping, right? There are tools that you can do that. We use demand tools, we use data loader just to do a manual merging for a duplicate context. We can do fuzzy logic, we can do certain logics in terms of data duplication. The next is about how I would describe my process to implement in a production environment. So typically, this is the piece of development that I would do in my own developer sandbox. So I'm going to go straight. Okay, so I have a two visual first page. One is to call the account ID and then assign it to the controller to display. And the second visual first page is the actual account hierarchy to display all accounts with the siblings and knows which master, the parent account, and primary contacts. So how I would go about implementing this: build it in developer console or directly in the production developer sandbox, and then do the version controlling while you start doing that. So always update your versioning of the code and then save it to the repository, right? That way you have the history of different versioning of your updated codes. The next thing is to have a kind of like SIT testing sandbox where it allows you to do more robust testing functionality if you have a test class, or you can do somebody else to do a code review in that SIT or another developer sandbox. So there are few level sandboxes: a full sandbox, the partial sandbox, the developer pro, and the regular developer sandbox. So typically you want to use regular developer sandbox to do your own code development, and the developer pro is to do the SIT. And then with the partial is to allow you to do some kind of UAT process where it has some records that you can use for with a data loader. So the next part is the full sandbox, is the full replica of production. This is to do how your piece of functionality will work in production, because it allows you to do a load testing, to do a staging. So the staging means, if you have 80% of functionality already good enough that you can show as prior to the release, UAT will be good to understand how the performance should work, right? For example, if you build a bunch of automation that requires a lot of memories in the server, so doing this type of testing is always good in the full sandbox. All right. So again, my first two tabs are the visual first page. The next one I want to show is the Apex class itself. the first one, let me just duplicate it also. The first one is the pass parameters controllers, and the second one is the account select class controller. So let me start with the Salesforce page. Straightforward. This is where we have the input text that will pass the account ID. So it's a form, a simple page block. This is where you see the input here, and I can always change the verbiage, the text, the account ID, and this is declared in the class with the comment button submit, where the submit button has a re-rendering functionality of the variable in the class that will allow you to perform an action called redirect. So account ID, AC ID, and redirect. So if you go to the class, so the class name is the pass parameter controllers with the get and set parameters. And the get and setter method is something that Salesforce page requires to do, that allows you to basically in the access level, so that Salesforce framework can access these methods. So what is getter mean? So getter means the systems Salesforce returns the value of the attribute. So, and then the setter is basically assigning the value to that attribute. So the attribute is of these two is the account ID and the AC ID. So remember, the account ID with double C is from the text field itself, the input text, right? Okay. And okay, Salesforce page. And with the page reference to have the redirect happens, then we want to have this new variable from the ID that we passed, right? And then the public page reference to redirect is the redirect of what needs to happen, as the new page reference will have the current URL adding the account ID, and then you want to set the redirect to true, and then return that objects to open up the page, basically. Okay, so this is the constructor that needs to happen as a page reference to redirect properly. And that's pretty much it for the first Salesforce page and the Apex classes. Now the next part is the Salesforce page for the class for the accounts display itself, the account hierarchy, I call it. So I want to start by having this show header true. Basically, this is the header that has a piece of functions to allows my input checkbox. The checkbox that allows you to select which record is coming from this logic, right? So when we selected the checkbox, we want to be able to just update the selected records from the checkbox. So I declare the variable input checkbox to do just that input, and it's just keep growing with the variable of I, and then the some type of indicator where the I is keeps growing and up to the 200 records, then it will have that error handling. So the next part of that is just standard styling. The account hierarchy itself has several buttons. Uh, this is the updates on the update contact status when you select the contacts, and the next one is the save button. When after the user makes some changes, the changes should be committed to database as a new values. The next one is the cancel button, where if a user already make or type some changes but not hit save, you can still click that cancel button so that the changes are not committed to the database. Okay. And then the input checkbox itself. Now, this is where we use the repeat value functionality. The repeat value is driving from the wrapper methods of the account list. So, what exactly the purpose of what I use for the repeat value? So, the repeat value allows me to grab the contact list and then do a repeat of that account names to display the account names with the primary contacts to be displayed, and then come back to the wrap accounts name again, and then to do display the contact names, and then account names again, and to the contact name. That has to be a repeater functions. Okay, so that's basically what a wrapper account and the repeat value functionality is about. The next part is just a column fields with names, email, mobile phone number, status, and text ID. So that's the Salesforce page for the account hierarchy. Now, if we go back to the accounts hierarchy class, the name of the class is the about select class controller, and declare all the variables that you want to instantiate with the get and private setter methods, because this is a Salesforce page requirements to have a get and set method, getter setter. This is where the wrapper accounts, where I want to get a wrap account list. The next part is the constructor, where I want to show the controller itself, right? So I want to get record with this account from the account object, and then this account list is a new of list of an account object. The map is to do collections methods, where I want to show first pass is the base primary contacts as a new map of ID and account contact role. So an ID of a contact that has account contact role records in there. So the argument is to select the ID, contact ID from the account contact role, where the primary is true and account ID is the account ID. So this is the first pass that my understanding about those requirements. In order to use a primary contact standard functionality in Salesforce, you will need to have account contact role object driven by an account, and the primary checkbox should be marked as true. Then display all of these contact that has that account contact roles in Salesforce space. So the next part is the account base itself. Okay, so move on to the account base. So the account base is basically a collection of my queries with an ID, the parent ID of that account. So display all IDs, and if the IDs is parents, and then show the parent ID, the name and the parent name, and Then I do a nested query to retrieve a contact records associated with that accounts. And also I want to do a nested query with the ID and name from the child accounts. Okay, so we have the account, parent account with the parent and parent name, and then I want to do a child accounts, and then the overall word clause is to have an ID is the account ID. So now the traverse of the hierarchy downwards, when we set the ID of an account that we need to query and bring it map as part of the ID account in the base accounts and the child accounts of the new child accounts, and make it as a key set. The same thing for the map ID and account contact roles. You need to know the account contact roles, and if the child primary context is the new map of the account contact role, where the ID and the contact ID from this account contact role is primary, true, and also the account ID in accounts to query. Okay. Now, what I also consider about this class is to have the accounts to query size. So this is to display, you want to bring the accounts with the queries more than 0. So you have to pass the actual records and then display it in the Salesforce page. So if it's showing 0, then you do not want to display the records, or blank empty rows basically. Now, an error handling that I've done is if account list size is greater than 2. So let me go back to the records. This is where it says if an account list is it's greater than 2, then it shows too many accounts displaying only first 100 records. That's where this magic happens. The error handling messages within the Salesforce page. Okay, so that's the first error handling. The second error handling is the base primary contact size is more than 1, as well as the child primary contact size is also greater than 1. So you want to have more than 1 records for primary contacts to have with the no records to display. Remember when I said in Salesforce, when you use the account contacts and then assign a primary contact using the account contact role, you can only assign 1 primary contacts per account. So if for whatever reasons you have a primary contact that is more than 1, then this message will display, because it will not work as it's not according to standard Salesforce functionality. So no records to display. We will exclude them basically. And then also for the catch, try and catch as part of the DML exceptions, we have the update selected contacts. With the status contact that contacted to show you basically the message has been updated successfully. That's the message to do the try and catch. The next one is okay, that's just the wrapper. Okay, so this is the process selected to do all of these updates, the contact status. And then the next button is the save selected to save the records that has been edited and then committed to the database. The try and catch with the catch message is has been updated successfully. And then the cancel selected is basically not committed to the database. And this is where the container class happens with passing the account to set to the ACC property, and that's basically the list of logic that I've built. Okay, so overall, this is the whole code, and I would basically do uh, build this code based on the tools that I have, and then keep updating my line of codes with a version controlling history within the tools. So like a GitHub, like I said, you could do a version control with the latest section of the codes. You can do branch, you can do master, you can do fork, whatever that you want to commit to that file. You always do a version control naming automated. So, or if you don't have any tools like that, very simple. Okay, all you have to do is basically, if you go to the edit, okay, in the first I would basically create version 1.0 dated 7 6 8 a.m. by me. Okay, version 1.1 dated 7/7/2020 8 a.m. by me. And then and so on. Okay, and then in this quick save, then you want to do a copy of this file and then name it as the latest version updates. And then so the latest file should have this many of these version histories recorded, so that other developers should understand, okay, so if I open the version 2.1, then we have about 12 updates so far, and I should see the 12 updates here. And whatever update that you have, you should mark it as a part of the comments itself. So that's kind of like best practice that you want to do. Okay, so there you have it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any more questions, feel free to email me, call me, and we'll discuss more about the functionality. Or if you have any other question, feel free to contact. Thank you. Bye bye.